I'm hitting the record button. All right. We just got that automated recording in progress statement. So good afternoon. Actually, I guess it's still morning. I'm Chris Mercier, and I'm here with our newest council member, Michael Cherry, who, since she has been elected, has been doing a lot of her own unique form of communication, mostly the Zoom videos to our members, which I'm sure people greatly appreciate. And I wanted to produce this video with you because I think it's just a great new way that people are turning to for communication from all sorts of, not just public officials, but reporters, everything. And I want to take advantage of it. So as you know, I used to, for a spell, was into podcasting. And I think I had you on my podcast show, if you want to call it that, while you were still the community fund director. Do you remember that?
Yep, I do remember that. It was great. Yeah, you're the one who got me really excited and passionate about doing podcasts at the community fund. And we've been doing that for a couple of years now. And Angie Sears is the new community fund director, and she's still taking that on. So yeah, you're the one who got us inspired to do that work.
On accident, I guess. Anyway, so I guess one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because you're the newest council member, and ironically, or not ironically, I might be misusing that term, I was first elected with your sister, Angie Blackwell, back when all of us were much younger. In fact, I had no gray hairs in my goatee or anything. You look pretty much the same. Like
What?
The genes in your family, yeah, because I know your family. The genes in your family, you guys are lucky. But anyway, here I am 17 years later. Now I'm working with you, and I think next week will be your first 90 days on the job as a tribal council member. And I'm always eager to pick the brain and get the first reactions of rookie council members. And we could take this discussion however you want to go. But how's it been for you being now a council member?
First of all, thanks for doing this. I think it's great. One of the initiatives that I had when I was running was tribal member communication. And sometimes people are like, oh, is that, how is that, doing these videos? And, I had done probably, I don't know, maybe a half a dozen videos when I was running. And then I've done 4 post-election videos, and they do get easier. And it's not the most comfortable thing to always have to put yourself out there in that way, but I think that it's important. So I just wanted to tell you that and say thanks for doing that, and thanks for doing this work, because it should be something that we're stretching ourselves. When I can't remember which family member told me, it might have been Angie actually, when you're always comfortable, it's nice to be comfortable, but you're not really growing, you're stretching yourself. And so every time I'm in a situation where I'm not entirely comfortable, I just remind myself that those are the periods of growth. So thanks for doing that. It's been definitely a growth period for me. This first 90 days, my 100th day will be Christmas Eve, my 100th day. So yeah. It's been amazing, actually. I honestly love it. I've been told that it's my honeymoon phase, and that that's going to shift here before too long. I'm praying that doesn't happen. I feel like it's been a really good fit. I have really enjoyed learning as much as I possibly can each and every day from council, the current existing council. I feel like it's just been so supportive, and I see a lot of unity. Not to get too far off on a rabbit trail, but you hear things as tribal members when you're not here, and you hear things that are, not always so positive about the way things are going, and the continuity within council. And so I didn't really know what to expect there. And it's been really awesome being here and seeing that a lot of those things that people say are really actually not true. A lot of the things that you hear about, and some of that could have been true when I wasn't here, but my experience so far has just been a really positive one.
And you come from a family, intergenerational family of council members, because your mom served on council, I think, in the late 80s, early 90s, maybe even to the late 90s, I think. And of course,
Yep.
your
She was
sister served during, what do they call that? The aughts, like the early 2000s. I've heard it called the aughts, whatever that decade is. Your sister, of course, served in that era as
Mhm.
well. So
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
you,
In the first post restoration tribal council. So
okay,
she was in 1983. I talked about the little yellow house in my last video. So we lived on Grand Ronde Road right here by the cemetery in a little yellow house that's no longer there. It was torn down. But that's where we lived when we celebrated restoration. And my mom was sworn in on that first tribal council. And so she served over a decade. And then Angie, of course, was after that.
yeah, yeah. And so did you find yourself going to them for advice or kind of tricks of the trade when you got on, or when you were initially considering running for tribal council?
Yeah, watching my mom go through tribal council, I mean, of course, I was younger and really, not fully understanding, embracing, what that experience was for her. And that was a different time, that was definitely a different era. And then watching Angie, my sister, go through tribal council, there was a lot of turbulence at that time. I saw her go through a lot of things that were, not enjoyable. It was hard to watch that as a sibling and a family member. So yeah, really even like thinking about myself being in this role, nobody could have convinced me a few years ago that was going to happen. And we can touch on that and I'll give you my theories about how that happened. But I would not have imagined myself in this role watching what my sister went through. And that was an entirely different experience. But yeah, I admire them greatly. And when I did decide to run, it really was a family decision, and it should be, it's a huge commitment and it shouldn't be taken lightly. And I did get a lot of advice from both my mom and from Angie, and also current council members. I met with current council members and past council members and really wanted to make it about, listening to other people's experiences and gleaning so as much as I possibly could, knowing that, if I did get elected, things were going to change, very quickly, which obviously did happen. I got sworn in on Wednesday, the 15th, and we had our first tribal council at 1:00. So yeah, diving right in.
Well, and yeah, I had forgotten about how maybe traumatic's not the word, but there's a really like small time frame from which you have to transition from whatever it was you were doing previously into the tribal council position. Because governor, president, senators, you have weeks, if not months, in which you kind of plot out your exit. And I've always wondered what it's like for employer, because I was working here at the tribe as the tribal librarian. So I wasn't the first tribal employee to get elected, but I've often wondered what it's like for council members who are in some outside occupation. They have to tell their employer, "Oh yeah, I got elected. I'm getting sworn in 72 hours. See ya."
Right. How did I not know that you were the librarian? What year?
I don't know, like 2004, but yeah, I was the tribal librarian and I was helping promote the library, and I spent a good part of my summer cataloging books, and I actually enjoyed it. It was quiet.
Yeah.
And I still hope that one day we actually have our own standalone library, because I think libraries contribute a lot to a community. But
I agree.
That's a whole other discussion, but it gives us the chance to segue into some other things that I hope we can talk about, because you're working on your first budget, and the budget is what reflects kind of council priorities and the direction of the tribe. And so I'm curious to get your thoughts on like how your first budget process was. Are there any new services that you're particularly excited about that we're launching in 2022?
Yeah. Well, luckily or thankfully for me, already having been through this process, being on the casino board and going through that budget process, I think not having been through that, it would have been really overwhelming. I mean, the budget is extensive, and I'm always encouraging people to, go through the budget and ask questions and reach out to us. I think as a tribal member, before I was on council, I had only written in for comments on the budget a handful of times, 2 or 3 times. And every time I did, it was always about elder pay and the burial fund, the elder pension. Those were things that were important to me, and everybody has things that are important to them. But as tribal members, I'm always encouraging people, to make sure to go through the budget and reach out to us and make those comments. But having not been through that on the casino board and also at the community fund, it definitely would have been overwhelming. But I really am so excited about some of the new initiatives that we have coming up, and thank God for some of the ARPA funds that we have and the CARES funding that we have that we're able to put forward to some other projects coming up. But definitely housing. I think housing really needs to be a focus and a priority for us. And it looks like now that's happening, and we've got a lot of things coming up and breaking ground, that really is exciting that we're really focusing on those things right now in Grand Ronde. When I was running, a lot of those things that were really important to me were focused on things that were happening in Grand Ronde, programming, housing in Grand Ronde. So a lot of those programming and initiatives that are happening that you can see in the budget right now, it's really exciting. It's really good to see a lot of new initiatives that are happening right now. It's a really great time to be at the table.
Yeah, it is. And you also just very recently, yesterday, you got to make your first decision on per capita.
Yes, I did. That was an exciting process. It was good. Just the synergy that we have within the room and the conversations with other tribal council members. Chris Lino does a great job coming to the table and really laying all of that out for us in terms of, where we're at and making those decisions as a group based on, actual solid data, and having that expert opinion definitely helps. But, coming to the table and being able to have differing viewpoints is very encouraging. And that's been my experience so far, really being able to have conversations with council members and not always agreeing and seeing eye to eye, but being allowed to have those discussions and just openly those things. I think it's great. Hi, Cheryl. Good morning.
We have a guest appearance. So I'm recording a Zoom that we're going to upload to social media. And Michael's just talking about her first 90 days on the job, but there's nothing wrong. We have no problem with guest appearances, right?
No, we were talking about guest appearances, so this is great.
Yeah.
This is Evelyn Blanchard. She traveled up here from Albuquerque.
Okay.
And
Wow.
she used to be in the Indian Health Service area office.
Okay.
Social worker for over 20 years.
Wow.
And so
Nice.
she was one who helped champion the Indian Child Welfare Act.
Really?
Authored,
Can we get her?
authored
Can I get her on camera if you want to be on camera?
it.
Okay.
Who's she's on, Evelyn?
That's-
Nice to meet you. Welcome.
Michael, she's one of our councilwomen.
Yeah.
How you do?
Good.
I'm
Well,
good.
Here.
You.
Howdy.
Here.
Good to
How
meet
you
you.
do?
I'm good. Wow. This is quite the surprising honor, isn't it, Michael?
It is. Evelyn, I have heard great things about your work, and I started in Indian child welfare for the Grand Ronde Tribe back in the early 90s. So it's definitely my passion. Thank you so much for all of your work and everything that you've done for Indian child welfare.
Well, let me tell you, when was it? In the early 90s, early 80s, huh? Grand Ronde, really,
Yes.
you guys
Oh, yeah.
did, led the
When I-
effort. See what happened with when the Indian Child Welfare Act was passed, no money, not a damn dime. And its appropriation had been projected for 26 million.
Way back
And what
then.
I've been able to investigate so far, what I've learned is that it was blocked by Congresswoman Millicent Fenwick from Connecticut, I think. She's from
Sounds right.
Connecticut. Okay. Why? I don't know. So anyway, we got the law, but there was no way
money.
no money and no way to protect tribal children with their relatives and in other tribal homes because they weren't approved by CYFD and CYFD not going to approve them for the most part. So I don't remember whose idea it was. Now Maria has a lot of this history and
Yes.
she sent me all the papers and stuff.
Mm.
And we're researching more because we want to get into the legislative history. What were people saying at that time about this proposal, tribal proposal? And so the upshot of it was that the tribes were able to convince the Oregon legislature to fund tribal placements from the
Relative
general fund,
placements,
from the
yes.
general fund.
Relative, the first in the country.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And I testified it during those times because here, I remember going to Seattle
Mhm.
and speaking there and saying, if you're non-native, you can pay relatives. But if you're native, you can't. How fair is that? So I brought that back here and Oregon agreed.
Mm.
Yeah, it was so I'm going to chronicle that whole thing in the book because that was a first effort and that's where
Yes.
tribes stood up and said, hey,
Yeah,
let's make some sense of this damn thing.
yeah.
So anyway,
Oh,
So
yeah.
anyhow,
Yeah,
I don't want to hijack.
No,
your-
no, that's all being recorded. Are you, I was gonna put it on YouTube. Do you want me to edit it out or?
Evelyn.
I don't give a damn.
Okay, it stays in then. Thank you.
Well, you're trailblazers for
Thank
sure.
you. Yeah, quite the surprise. Thank you very much.
See, just a segue right into having our guest speaker.
Yeah, yeah. That was so unscripted and so good. And
Yeah,
I'm
that
so
was,
glad they're okay with us leaving
Yep.
it in.
that was perfect.
Yeah, perfect. Oh, geez.
What
Where
were we
we
even
in?
about? Yeah. Oh, housing and the budget. Yes. So I'm mostly excited about that and seeing those projects just get kicked off the ground and being able to provide for our members in Grand Ronde. It's just what's really in my heart, and I'm just excited to see that come to fruition.
Yeah.
What
yeah.
You've been through that budget process quite a few times. It's my first go around. So, a lot of things, really exciting being here in the community this entire time. But, I've shared this with you before. Had I come from somewhere else or a different organization or not been a part of the community, this would be really overwhelming. It'd be really overwhelming not have already been here. So, yeah.
You'd already been seasoned to some degree on kind of the tribal government and the budget process, but for whatever it's worth, if we're asking, we used to get into really detail into the budget. Like we would spend several weeks, we would have big binders, and just go through it department by department, and we've streamlined it somewhat. But of course, if council members feel the need to scrutinize, or they feel like an area or service requires a deeper dive, we have the ability to do that. And I think that's what we'll probably be doing over the next couple of weeks. But as your sister could attest, it was definitely a much more longer process than what we've got it down to now. And some people, I think, might think we need to commit more time to it, and they're probably not wrong in that degree. But it's always an eye-opening experience when you, well, for one, it's just interesting to see how many departments we have and just the variety of services we offer and the types of work that is being done in our tribal government.
Right.
And you also have that over at the casino as well. Like I always found it fascinating to look at marketing and kind of hear from the marketing director and understand some of the thinking behind the strategies that Spirit Mountain Casino was employing. And marketing is definitely a science / art that I knew very little about and still know very little about, but I always found it the most interesting thing to be explained to us at the casino. I take that back. Surveillance was fun too. Surveillance and security and knowing some of what they have to deal with over there.
Well, yeah, I worked in marketing for a decade before I, circled back around to the community fund 5 years ago here at the tribe. But yeah, like those marketing efforts, in that budget process, they really kick off the initiatives for other departments to tell them, hey, these are the objectives and these are the goals. So that was a really fascinating process to go through in marketing and be there for the decade that I was. And yeah, here we have amazing staff. And I agree, like kind of getting into a little bit more detail because it is so extensive, really being able to take the time to do that, I think is important to do. But by the same token, you have amazing staff, you have these experts in these departments that know what they're doing. And so you rely on them to us as council members, what's driving their work and what their objectives are. Hats off to finance and Chris Lino and their team. The volume and the amount of work that they bring forward is incredibly impressive.
It is. And, the truth is we, as council members, we probably get too much credit for a lot of the work that staff does. And
yeah,
we have some very, very hardworking staff, not just here, but also at the casino that they're the engine that drives everything.
Yep.
So we can never express too much thanks to staff.
I agree with
that.
It's definitely a balance. I agree with what you're saying. It is great to have that high level overview of the budget like we have right now and really seeing, I like having the bullets of the new initiatives that are coming out that give tribal members, really tangible things that they can, wrap their heads around. I love that. But I do agree it's a balance and being able to take the time to get into a little bit more of the detail would also be really good too. I enjoy that. Yeah. I'm probably one of the people around here that maybe likes to get into, people are always saying, I don't want to get into the weeds. And I'm like, what's wrong with the weeds? Like, I like getting into the weeds, but that's just my attention to detail personality.
Yeah, it takes a certain type of personality that likes to just look at pages of numbers and figures. Yeah. And I sometimes like it. It depends on the subject, but Michael Langley, former auditor, finance, my mom's an accountant or was an accountant.
I love your mom.
Certain personality to do that.
Yep.
But so we were talking about, so you just did your first per capita approval. And if I'm not mistaken, I actually think this is the 15th year that we have done the quarterly distributions. Because
really?
Yeah. We started that in 2007. So that would make the 15th year. And we started working on the quarterly distribution, amending our revenue allocation plan to allow for the quarterly distribution in 2006. But, you've been around long enough to where you can remember the Friday per capita distribution and how that was pretty much like a holiday out here
Yep.
at the tribe.
Yep. I really enjoyed that. I like that kind of thing. It's kind of like Black Friday, and it was a Christmas present. I enjoyed the hustle and bustle of that. It was a little bit crazy. Yeah. So I didn't realize that was 15 years. What in the world?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and we definitely received our share of opposition to us doing that. Some people, for assorted reasons, wanted to keep it at the single annual distribution in December. But I think when we did a survey several years later, it was still overwhelmingly people were in favor of per capita. We'll have to find that survey of the quarterly distributions, excuse me.
Yeah.
But yeah, and of course we haven't really, COVID has affected so much around the governance here, and it will be fun when we can still get back to the December distribution, because it is,
Yeah.
you just see a lot of people that you don't normally
No.
see, people
Yep.
who make special journeys just to come down here to pick up their checks.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it's always fun just to walk through the gym or the community center, and you'll run into
Yeah.
people that you'd met years ago and
Mm-hmm.
catch up, and it's kind of like powwow in some degree. You see and interact with people that you don't see
Yeah.
very often. So
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because Lisa Lino and I were talking about that yesterday, and just not a missed opportunity. I would say just having more of an opportunity when people come to Grand Ronde from out of town and out of state for those things, powwow, the check distribution, really making that something that is memorable, and having things for people to do, and having opportunities for people to connect, around a coffee house or library. I think you and I are on the same page there.
yeah, well, the
Yeah.
library would have like a coffee shop in it, because you just had like Salem Library, library at U of O, library at Michigan State, library at Lewis and Clark. They all had coffee shops inside the
Yep.
library, and there's something about coffee and books that go hand to hand. But
Yeah. I
uh,
was considering getting a Kindle this year. I think they were like, I don't know, I want to say $50. I don't even know how much they are normally, but for Black Friday, but that's a good deal. I just couldn't do it. I just love my holding the book, smelling the book. I
so
probably
do
have,
I.
yep.
So
Yep.
do I. But one of the
Yeah.
things that we're talking about launching next year is the e-reader program, to offer funds for tribal members that want to purchase e-readers, preferably for kids. But the whole thing about the printed word is reading is just a very valuable skill. It helps
Yep.
you in your education. It helps you on your professional side. And there's nothing wrong with being a good reader and a habitual reader. But
Right.
as you've stated, a lot of people from from generations after ours aren't as big a fan of the written word, holding books.
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't want to get into screen addiction, because that's its own subject, but the
Yeah.
habit of looking at a screen most days, I think, is becoming ingrained in a lot of people younger than us. So
Yeah.
I don't know that we can convince a lot of those people to just ditch the screens for paper and print. But
Mhm.
if we help tribal members get these e-readers like the Kindle Paperwhite or some of the competitors, you're at least trying to harness the habit of staring at a screen and just getting them to develop
Mhm.
better reading
Yep.
habits.
Yep.
And plus, downloading books to your e-reader won't jam up your bookshelf. Especially if you're like me, if you're someone who has more books than you'll probably live long enough to read, which is basically me.
Yep. People are always joking, like, about like the things they love, women with, shoes or handbags. And I'm always like, I don't need another book, but I can't help myself. So I have a stack of books on my nightstand, and I'm usually reading 2 or 3 books simultaneously. I don't know why. I just enjoy that. And yeah, I am with you 100%.
What are you reading right now?
Oh, goodness. I am reading a book by Kevin Zadai, It's a spiritual book, which may not surprise you, which, by the way, I wanted to say that early on, my first 90 days, one of the things that I was really surprised about, and I've shared this with Cheryle, and something I love so much, we're spiritual people, and Cheryle mentions that a lot in opening our meetings with prayer and being able to smudge in the office. Like, it's such an amazing blessing and gift. I'm so thankful for it as a spiritual person, and that being a part of my life, and a part of our culture. Is just, that has been, I don't want to say surprising to me, but coming from other environments where that wasn't something that was, practiced or acceptable, it's just such a blessing. And I hope that people recognize that. And I've just really enjoyed that. And having a chairwoman who really honors that value, and practices it every day. I wanted to really say that, because it's been amazing to me. So that's the book I'm reading right now. It's Kevin Zadai, along with like 3 or 4 other books, but usually I don't read a lot of fiction. I try to get into fiction, but I'm too practical for that.
Okay, so I just finished the original Dune trilogy. And don't blow it off as sci-fi. There is a lot of spirituality to the series. It plays a big role in the main characters.
Okay.
So for whatever it's worth, and I don't know if you saw the movie. I watched the movie because that one in the 80s was just not a very good movie. The new one that came out I thought was really good. And of course, articles have been making the rounds about Frank Herbert, who wrote the Dune series, how he was inspired because he lived in Oregon for a spell and was inspired by the dunes on the Oregon coast. I think around Florence. This was in the 1950s. And I don't think it was the sole inspiration, but the
I
whole
love
series of movies are all set on a planet that is nothing but sand dunes and giant worms. And it's sci-fi. We can't forget that. But I think you might like it. He's actually a very good writer.
My son would appreciate that. And, don't judge a book by its cover. I'm always open to, trying something new. So never say never.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I'm too cheap to have sprung yet for my professional Zoom license. So we're only allowed up to 40 minutes. And so we'll probably be getting a prompt here about how our time's running out soon. But
I hope we do this more often, Chris. I think it's really important to stay connected. I think, just in light of everything, even that's going on in the world, I have a lot of worries, for our kids and mental health. And, we had a good discussion the other day about mental health programming. So that's not something new, but I just really appreciate this. And I think it's going to be really nice for people to have that connection.
Well, I would like to make it a regular thing if you want to help. And I wouldn't mind going back to what I was doing with the podcast, where I would get guests, for lack of a better word, come on and talk to me. And we don't always have to talk about tribal political issues. I'm just interested in getting to know like some of the tribal members. So maybe you and I could tag team, get some tribal members who have an issue that's important to them, or who just want to tell their story. Because a lot of our tribal members have really, really unique biographies.
Yes, they do.
And when you get to talk to a lot of them, you'd be surprised at some of the stories you'll hear. But I want to make this a regular thing, and I want to soup it up a little bit, because when I recruited you to do this, I thought I would be able to master this app that connects to your Zoom that would allow like applause and like an intro and all that. But as I showed you, it was a lot more complicated than I thought it would be, and I just wanted to get something done today.
Yeah.
So, maybe we can even get like people like Denise, or Denise Harvey, the blonde lady council. Yeah, her.
I think she'd be game.
She's a USC fan, so skeptical. Well, you're a Beaver though too, so
Go Beavs.
All right. On that note, no, seriously,
I
I
like-
think we could make this a
well-
regular thing. It's fun. It's fun to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And maybe next Friday. I'll see you next Friday.
All right, that'd be great. I think it is important to make those connections with people and let them just hear and see some of your personal side and telling the stories as, just a normal person. It doesn't have to be about tribal politics and everything that we have going on, although, we have a lot of initiatives that I'm sure tribal members are interested in. I do like the personalization. So thank you for doing that. And we've had this conversation too about maybe putting something on our webpage where we have a tribal council corner and people can ask us questions and, we can share pictures of our cats or something. I don't know, but, having that personalization, I think it's really important. So thank you.
All right, cool. We'll
Right.
see you soon.
Okay. Have a
Right.
good weekend.